It's a beautiful sunny morning here in Hawaii. Bright and cheery. I'm still having my coffee, but I couldn't resist. The weather is so nice this morning. People tend to call this place paradise, but as far as I'm concerned, I am in corn heaven. Yes, sirree. I mean it, corn heaven. This is the first time in years. Since I moved from California to Hawaii, I now have more than enough room to grow all the corn and all the corn varieties that I could even possibly imagine. I may have kept this no secret over the years, but corn is one of my favorite crops. Corn has been the basis of American culture, going all the way back through the Mayans and the Olmecs, coming forward through to the United States of America. The Corn Belt is still the center of our agriculture in this country. It is a crying shame that Monsanto got their hands on the stuff and a couple other genetic engineering firms and decided to screw with the corn so that they GMO'd it, so now it really can't be trusted anymore, and they could destroy one of the most valuable food crops that ever hit the face of the planet. That aside, their indiscretions with the plant still don't hinder my love for it. Corn is sweet corn. Corn is baby corn for chow mein. Corn is masa and hominy for tortillas, tamales, and hominy grits. Corn is meal and flour for corn bread and many other types of corn pone, you name it. Corn fritters. Corn is also popcorn. And most of these varieties actually kind of go back to the beginning of time. The natives had popcorn and so on. Anyhow, I also love corn because as a grain, it is one of the easiest to work with without mechanization. I mean, you can raise corn for making meal in your own garden and simply harvest it by hand. You don't need a combine. Hang it up off the garage, let it dry up in the air, and then shell it out. You can get a nice little iron ring that'll help you shell it, or you can use a screwdriver to get it off. You don't need a special tool, really, to get corn off of the cob. And then a simple grinder, whether it be the hand grinding type for less than $50 or an electric model that could cost you $100 or more. Simple tool will allow you to turn the corn into an edible product. I'm hot on corn, one of my favorite crops. I now have all the room that I can possibly spread out on with my corn patch. So I am in corn heaven here in Hawaii. Running across the property in front of the lens, you'll see a 12-foot wide by 150-foot strip that used to have weed block over it yesterday. It's between the bananas and my last raw coffee here. I stripped the weed block off. I went ahead and I planted 3 varieties of grinding corn in here. I have Nostine Dent, Oaxacan Green Dent, and I also have Glass Gems, multicolored corn. I took the weed block and I moved it over here underneath the fence line all the way down the county road. Now this is going to help me keep the grass from growing up under my fence so we don't end up with the fence collapsed again. Moving the weed block opened up this wonderful strip right here. The white stuff you see on the soil is lime mixed with some chicken manure that I tossed on top of corn seed after I planted it. I got about half of that stretch planted with grinding corn down here, and the other half of it over there, well, we're reserving some room for popcorn yet to come. We all love popcorn. It's really, really easy to grow. The only rules are if you're growing flour and meal corns, or if you're growing sweet corns, you can't have the popcorn around pollinating at the same time. Because if the flour corn pollen gets into the popcorn, it won't pop. If the popcorn pollen gets into the sweet corn, it ain't gonna be sweet, and so on. And so the only issue with different varieties of corn being grown in the same garden is you do have to keep them segregated from one another. As far as if you put together usually different types of sweet corns, you don't usually have too much trouble with the cross-pollination because it's all pretty well sweet, unless you're dealing with a super sweet type, then it requires isolation. When you're dealing with flour and meal corns, yes, you can get some cross-pollination if you have more than one type, but it's not really going to affect the product, only the seed. Popcorn is not compatible with any of the other two as far as the pollen's concerned. And so the way to get around this is two. One, you segregate the corn in distance. And so here on the 2 acres we have in Hawaii, it's possible for me to get the corn moved far enough away from each other that they're probably not going to bump in and cross-pollinate too much. Also, though, historically, I have worked in time. I will plant one crop of corn, let it get up so that it's going to pollinate before planting the next crop of corn, and so on. And so if you stage your corn plantings so they're separated in time, the pollen will miss each other. In that case, it is possible to have popcorn and field corn, or field corn and sweet corn side by side, as long as the timing is such that they're not pollinating simultaneously. So up here along the north boundary line with the neighbors, I have tilled up a space. Mostly I worked this spot to try to keep the jungle from their yard from stretching inside my fence line. So I came through here with my rototiller recently and I tilled down all the weeds. And then this was where I planted the original corn. Over here what I'm doing is growing the Hawaiian super sweet varieties. University of Hawaii has done a lot of work on breeding excellent, wonderfully sweet corns for the Hawaiian environment. There's a number of different numbered super sweets. This is super sweet number 10, and I believe I've also got number 9 over here growing in this patch. Now, to be able to create separation between the different corn pollens, I actually planted this seed one of the first things after I moved here to the island in 6-packs, and then I went ahead and moved the plants into the field. So they're well ahead of the field corn for grinding that I planted yesterday, which was planted directly in the ground from seed. Here you can see my beautiful little green corn babies. I've got them in between cartons from moving. It's a good way to kind of keep down the weeds. It's also, the soil up here is kind of wet, and so it made it easier for me to walk around without making mud balls out of everything. And also edged the corn patch over here with some squash. So I have a little trio of squash plants there. Over here, growing in my pigeon peas, I have some snap peas along one edge. Right over here at one end, I've got some Italian bush beans too. But predominantly this area is to be Hawaiian super sweet corn. As I said, it's well ahead of the corn that was planted yesterday, and so the pollen will miss. And in the case of super sweet corns, you really got to be careful. You don't even want to get them cross-pollinated with common sweet corns. It will really mess them up. Generally speaking, there is no reason to start sweet corn or hard corn seeds. Drilling the seed directly into the field is fine. Sometimes I find starting the super sweet varieties helps, because at least on the mainland where soils can be cold, super sweets will rot easily in cold ground. So if I start them in 6-packs in the greenhouse and then transplant them, I don't get as much seed mortality. But in the case of popcorn and hard corn or common sweet corns, they will come up even in cool soil. Germination is strong, and transplanting isn't required. The only reason that I'm doing any of this over here at all with corn is just in an effort to try to stage my varieties and control things a little bit, so I've got one thing overlapping the other. Anyhow, when the first trip I made over here to the island, I was introduced to what they locally call puna sweet, which is sweet corn that's grown here on the east side of Hawaii where it's nice and rainy. And they're varieties that were bred at the University of Hawaii in Manoa that are incredible. They're also quite different than the corn that we're used to on the mainland. Some of these are like sort of shoe peg varieties that have numerous small kernels rather than a few large kernels, so the bite is different when you put them into your mouth. Some of them also even have brown silk, which is something I haven't seen in mainland corn in decades. But the corns were bred specifically for the tropical environments here on the island, and they definitely thrive here. Despite the fact these unique sweet corns were bred specifically for Hawaii's climate, they are adaptable. And so if there's anybody who's ever traveled in Hawaii and had the experience of eating the local sweet corn here, and you've fallen in love with it like I did, I found that I could carry the seed back to the mainland. I've grown it in California with success, no problem. It's a little long season for some places, and so if you live in a far northern tier, you might find it a bit challenging. But in any moderate climate in the mainland United States, the Hawaiian sweet corns will work out. And so if you can get your hands on some of the seed from them, I highly recommend you give them a try. As far as growing hard corns and popcorns, field corn as we know it in the United States today, most of it is genetically engineered. You really don't want to have anything to do with that slop. But if you look backwards into time, you will find that both the whites in the United States bred many different heirloom field corns that were great for human consumption, have wonderful taste, open pollinated, you can save seed and so forth. Nostein Dent is one of my favorites. It's a really great yellow dent corn. I find that a lot of the native southwestern corns that our Native American tribes used in the Pueblos, Zuni Blue, for instance, is one I've grown that had enormous stalks, huge blue ears, and if you like blue corn, certainly those are a great choice, and the flavor is excellent. And so look towards heirloom, white man's corn, or Native American varieties when you're looking for corn to grind. And like I say, it is not hard to do. It's the easiest way to produce flours or meals for the home is raising corn. Much easier than things like wheat or things like oat. They don't require the same kind of threshing. Popcorn, total piece of cake, so easy, fun for kids. If your kids haven't ever seen popcorn grow in the garden, you're going to want to do this. I remember the first time at work that when I was running the nursery, that we planted popcorn in the garden at the nursery, and all the people I worked with were kind of dubious. Oh, you can really grow popcorn? Yeah, you can grow popcorn. It's real easy. But when we got it done and I dried the ears, and you got to get it just to the right moisture content. The inside still needs to have some moisture, but the outside kernel has to be really hard and dry. That's what causes the explosion, so it pops well. So you kind of get the handle on curing the corn just right in order to have it pop. But easy to grow. Don't mix the pollen with any other kind of corn. And you can take popcorn, husk it, take the entire ear with the kernels on the cob, put it inside a brown paper bag, roll it up, throw it in the microwave, punch the button for a few minutes, and it will pop off the cob into the bag. And then when you pull the cob out of the middle, you'll have popcorn on the cob too. This is remarkable. It's really fun. Anyway, here I am in paradise, but me personally, I am in corn heaven. I encourage everybody to plant more corn, and do your part to battle against the GMO multinational corporations, scumbag corporations, that are trying to take charge of one of the most fabulous crops on earth. Please maintain corn seed. Please grow corn. Happy gardening.